one thing even the most casual wrestling fan wants to do is attend a WrestleMania live. Seeing 60,000 people plus in a massive venue all ready for the show of shows truly is something, and you will get a special feeling in your gut as it kicks off. There's an overwhelming sensation that everything will be alright for the next few hours. Or 45 hours these days, but whatever, it is WrestleMania. You'll also get a unique perspective when you're there too. WWE is so good at production, they can easily tell whatever story they want on television, but nobody in the world can control a live environment. It's too unpredictable, which is where the joy lies. Want to know more? Damn right. I'm Simon from WhatCulture. Do remember to subscribe, and this is 10 things you only learn attending WWE WrestleMania Live. Number 10, the real reaction to Hulk Hogan. When Alexa Bliss kicked her fingers to create a WrestleMania moment by summoning Hulk Hogan to the stage, there was a wall of noise. Fans were on their feet and universally roared their approval at the comeback, or at least that's how it seems on TV. In the arena, it was very different. While the pop was a sizable one, there were also plenty of people who dipped their heads feeling that maybe this wasn't necessary. It did answer the question how the WWE Universe would react to the real American after his controversial comments, and seemingly the answer was they don't really mind at all. Everybody's opinions are going to be different, and if you want mine, it's all out there on the Ups and Downs episode for Mania 35.
I was uncomfortable with it.
This is obviously very specific to this show, but it is one of those fascinating things you may never know if you weren't in attendance, but it was very real. As cheerable as the opening of Hogan's theme music is, it is hard to forget the past, even if by this stage you've been able to forgive. Number 9, the sheer size of the production. When you see the WWE released images for the latest WrestleMania, it's easy to take in how awesome it is as a production. Almost looks like a movie set. What you never get a feel for, because it would be impossible, is the sheer size of the damn thing. You can see fans for miles, the sound is like having a cannon in your ear, the ridiculous nature of the modern day stadium is clear with a quick sideways glance, and even during lulls in a match you're still a bit overwhelmed by how big this all is. There's a reason it's so much more epic than everything else we see throughout a WWE calendar. Because of this, even though the sheer length of the thing will wear you out, you're never really bored because of the scale. It's such a huge event, and if you've ever seen a small show in your local venue, you'll probably burst out laughing. There's not even a comparison. The closest thing that it's kind of like is a festival, where people from all over the globe have decided it's okay to converge on one place and all stare at, depending on your seat, a tiny ring. It makes no sense when you think of it like that, but it truly is very impressive. Number 8, the multi-person match problem. Following on from the location of your seat, it does bring up another issue when we get into the likes of the Battle Royal or the team matches that have more than one group. When it is just one-on-one, it's fine, but throw in a couple more bodies and if you're far enough away, WrestleMania becomes a struggle in which you do everything in your power to not watch on the big screens, because if you're doing that, why did you turn up live to begin with? You kinda have to though, because if you are sitting at distance, it's just going to hurt your brain trying to figure out what's happening. That's a criticism for some multi-person matches in general, so imagine that when the individuals involved are running around like dots. You kinda have to figure out what colour hair the dot has to know who you're looking at. This is another reason to love Becky Lynch. She makes it so much easier. For example, during the women's tag match, Nia Jax and Tamina took some sick bumps into the steps and ring posts, but there was no way you could see both unless you were up close and personal. You need some kind of supervision, and that doesn't exist. It's at that point you just realize you've got no choice but to watch said big screens and enjoy the fact the audio you're experiencing is really loud, and probably far better than any commentary you'd be hearing anyway. Number 7, when people choose to go to the bathroom. An anecdote for you from WhatCulture's own Michael Sidgwick, who was in line for a portable toilet at WrestleMania 35, when someone offered $20 to anyone who would let him cut in line. I guess he didn't want to miss any of the 7 hours plus that was about to go down. Forget the fact that these toilets become horrendous even before the first proper match has started, you also see when fans decide to take a quick break during the card. Somewhat depressingly, a lot made the walk during the 4-way women's tag team title match. Always a little disheartening, but hey, if you gotta go, you gotta go. It's still one of those aspects of the show you never even think about when you're at home, and there is some weird sense of intrigue for it. After a while, you'll get a pen and paper out and start making a tally about what's keeping butts in seats and what isn't. It's also another reason we should probably shorten the show. You'd stick around if you thought you didn't have to wait a whole working day before getting a chance to relieve yourself. Try this the next time you go to any WWE event. That way, even if you don't like what's happening, you've made your own entertainment. We're going to talk about that later. Number 6, how fans feel about Triple H. That sounds odd, I'll admit, but when you're live, you pick up on a lot of random chats from the fans around you, and a topic of debate was the future of one Triple H, and specifically what he should do next. I'm not saying the Batista match was the greatest thing ever, but I am a man who still likes nostalgia at WrestleMania. Plus, I'm a Triple H supporter, so it becomes a whole thing, but not everybody agrees. At WrestleMania 35, a lot of individuals didn't know what they wanted to see from the game next year. I would never encourage someone to retire because there's an absolution to that which is daunting, but others thought it was time, or at least if he were to return in 12 months, the Goldberg-Lesnar model would be better than giving him the longest match on the pay-per-view. I can see the argument too. As wrestling continues to evolve, an old-school approach goes with it as well. Throw in how long the event was again, and a meticulously paced contest wasn't exactly what the crowd that night wanted to see. They just needed an adrenaline rush to wake them up. It's one for the comment thread then, but at the very least, I think we can agree someone else should get the Triple H entrance treatment. You give that to anyone and they'll feel like a star instantly, and Hunter doesn't need that anymore. He will forever be considered a wrestling legend. Number 5, how much it truly means to the performers. This does come across on the network because it's genuine, but some things are missed on TV as they would be when you're trying to frame a television show where dozens of things are happening instantaneously. For example, many times after a win and a quick video recap, we cut effortlessly to a wrestler celebrating in exactly the right spot for the cameras. Live, you'll see how they get from A to B, and the delight etched all over their face as they run around like excitable children after achieving on the biggest stage of all is wonderful. Seth Rollins was swinging that belt like a maniac even if he wasn't being filmed, and he looked ready to burst. Probably exhausted himself more with his celebrations than he did winning the Universal Championship against Brock Lesnar. Xavier Woods too, winning on Kofi Kingston, was like a man possessed, and you could totally believe he had no idea what the finish was, even though he totally did. It's a sobering experience and proof that passion does lie at the heart of all of this. Even as a fan, seeing that live is rather wonderful. Number 4, fans are a paying extra. You could technically argue that about any wrestling show given how important fans are to the experience, but none feature more than a WrestleMania crowd. The sea of people adds so much to the event and it allows it to stand out. On occasion it feels like the people may never stop. They go on forever. This was kind of proven when a certain section of the audience was blinded by a giant light drawing AJ Styles and Randy Orton. Didn't matter you couldn't see what was going on, your role was to make WrestleMania look epic and you did that job wonderfully, played your part. That naturally becomes less and less important the further you go back, and does mean that if you're in the so-called nosebleeds, you may find your experience not as warming as you'd want. Certain screens just cut to match graphics, making it harder to see, and there are bad seats. You can absolutely get blocked by the giant entrance screen that's even more gargantuan live than you can think about. You're still there though, and part of this wall of noise, and that's exactly what WWE needs and wants. So don't let them down, eh? Even so, number 3, you can make your own fun. If you go to WrestleMania, you shouldn't be moaning. I mean, you can, but it is a special experience, and anything you can do to enjoy it should be top of the agenda, even if you're in bad seats. My section did this by chanting 304 over and over again as The Miz and Shane McMahon fought around the arena, in hope they'd head in our direction. It would have been a terrible idea if they had, but it was still fun to pretend it could even be a thing. It's odd too, because in a stadium this size, such an approach is fine, and yet transfer this attitude to Raw and it threatens to ruin the show as fans don't really pay any attention to what's going on. I guess that's why wrestling is such a fascinating beast though. It's also a great place to have bizarre conversations about what could be happening. The Hardy Boys theme played for about 10 minutes in the arena, prompting some to question whether Vince had just fallen asleep and not given the correct cue. I'm sure someone actually believed that too. The point is, even if you do have to sit in the back row, there will be a bunch of people ready to ensure you have a good time either way. Number 2, the bizarre WrestleMania moments. What even is a WrestleMania moment anymore? Is it the planned ones WWE goes after? Is it those the performers themselves try and claim as their own? Or is it the small nuances that seem to speak directly to fans and the internet community at large? There's no one answer, but in 2019, the latter is starting to gain more weight. A perfect example of this is what happened between Batista and Triple H at Mania 35. Most agree it went longer than it needed to and felt even more extended there, but on closer inspection, all of Big Dave's over-the-top facial expressions and the fact he had his nose ring ripped out caused more of a stir, especially live. There was an explosion of shock and awe as WWE ventured into territory they rarely do in the modern day, as I'm sure plenty of parents reach for a controller to hide it from their watching children. As a friend of mine with kids said, "How on earth was that PG, Miller?" Oh, how becoming a father and mother changes us all. It's strange too because you can see which segments WWE wants you to bite on, and there's no guarantee the audience in attendance will. It's a coin flip, especially with a crowd that's happy to beat to its own drum. Number 1, the real WrestleMania moments. That's not par for the course, however, and getting to a place where both the office and the fans are in sync is wonderful. It's like a symbiotic relationship that heightens the action and puts a giant spotlight on the talent, which is how it should be. With WrestleMania 35, we're talking about Kofi Kingston winning the WWE Championship, of course. A technical and emotional tour de force, it stretched all the way from the front row right to the back. Even that guy on Reddit who hates everything had to crack a wee smile. The term "you deserve it" has already lost its way in wrestling, but that doesn't mean it's not true for certain people, and everybody had decided this was Kingston's night. When he got it without any shenanigans, it was time to stand up and cheer to your heart's content. That is what Mania is all about. This was the case when Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch had their own victories too, but none were as pleasant or as warmly received as the man who wasn't even meant to be in this position to begin with at the start of 2019. It was like a joint effort with the ultimate payoff. It was a pleasure to be a part of. Know of anything else you only learned by attending WrestleMania Live? Make sure you let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Then head over to WhatCulture.com and read yourself some articles, and follow WhatCulture on Twitter at WhatCultureWWE. My name is Simon from WhatCulture. I will talk to you again soon.